business models of these companies. You know, if just by having to classify drivers full-time, part-time, or what have you, is their availability? Does the availability pool go down? What happens to the economics of the business? Period. I think that's a major question.
Costs will definitely go up.
You're going to have to offer them health insurance to start. I mean, benefits.
Part-time, not if you say, okay, they're part-time employees, 20 hours, no benefits.
But then are they scheduling the drivers? I mean, it opens up so many questions. I would imagine they have to then, right, if you want to keep people part-time?
Up to 20 hours. Like, you could be part-time, do what you want, and then we knock you out at the end of the week. You never know how they might.
So it upends the model.
And again, maybe not just that model, but others who depend on the gig economy for these kind of workers. And they, as they say, as goes California, so goes the rest of the nation. And speaking of which, the state assembly has also passed a bill that would let college athletes collect endorsement money. The Fair Pay to Play Act would allow college athletes in California to be paid for the use of their name, image, and likeness. It would still need to go through state senate. It faces fierce opposition from the NCAA and the Pac-12 interest. Well, I mean, I guess that makes sense.
So it actually already passed the Senate, and then the Assembly passed it, but they made some modifications. So it'll go back to the Senate. But these are being voted on like 90% yes in California. The governor says that he'll sign it. They can expect him to sign it. The idea is NIL, name, image, likeness. They're not saying that the colleges have to pay the players if you play in California. They're just saying you can go, you can play, and make all this side money. Sell autographs, get an endorsement deal, make appearances.
What happened with that UCLA player and that whole legal battle there, but that he was trying because they were using his likeness, and he was trying to battle on that. That's a separate thing, because
that was in a video game.
I understand. So it was just narrowly because it was just the video game that's what he was after, not the whole enchilada.
That was a video game issue. Then there's other things where if you want to go and you want to sell autographs, you want to make appearances. Right now, you're not allowed to do anything, even if the college doesn't pay you. So the NCAA doesn't like this, but the state is giving them 4 years before the rule is in play. They're actually just hoping the NCAA will change their rules.
Has there been any sign that this will? Has the NCAA been open at all to changing this? I mean, with all the pressure they've been
by saying, look, we're letting it easier for you to transfer school to school if you want to get out of the school you are. We give the scholarship now, instead of it just being tuition, it's the full cost of attendance. So they're saying, look, we've made it better for students, but still within the limits that we control.
It will come as no surprise that I'm old school on this, that I wish we were back in the days when all university athletes were amateurs, and it remained that way, but the toothpaste is already out of the tube.
Read articles from 100 years ago. They were complaining about the same thing.
I know.
I'm old school. I say pay them.
Well, okay. I'm not even thinking that they were actually amateurs at the time. But yes, the toothpaste is out of the tube now. It's already the situation where universities are turning a profit using the likeness for marketing purposes and otherwise of these student athletes. So they should get a piece of that.
Bernie Sanders says they should get a piece too.
He did say that.
So final word on this then. We should expect, you think, even if California phases it over 4 years, that this could fundamentally change what athletes can expect in terms of
because think about it, you got UCLA, USC, Stanford, Berkeley, a lot of big schools in California that people want to go to anyway. So if you're an athlete, you think, hey, I can go to the West Coast, get on TV and get money and be in LA or San Francisco.
This will change recruiting big time if this happens.
You're right. Absolutely. Believe it there, guys. Thank you all. Appreciate it. Eric Chemi, Kate Rogers, and Bill Griffith. Secretary Pompeo and Treasury Secretary Mnuchin speaking at the White House just moments ago, addressing the departure of National Security Advisor John Bolton. Let's take a listen.
So last night, the president asked for Ambassador Bolton's resignation. As I understand it, it was received this morning.
Secretary Pompeo, was it because of a disagreement?
Go ahead. Yes, ma'am, in the back.
Go ahead, Terry.
Was it because of this disagreement?
I'll leave to the president to talk about the reasons he made the decision. But I would say this: the president's entitled to the staff that he wants at any moment. This is a staff person who works directly for the president of the United States, and he should have people that he trusts and values and whose efforts and judgments benefit him in delivering American foreign policy. It's what, as cabinet member, Secretary Mnuchin and I try and do each and every day. And when the president makes a decision like this, he's well within his rights to do so.
Secretary Pompeo, can you describe your working relationship with John Bolton as it was today?
Sure.
And that was Secretary Pompeo being addressed with multiple questions about John Bolton, the National Security Advisor, who was supposed to be participating in this 1:30 event at the White House, until the president suddenly announced that he was asking for his resignation just about 90 minutes before that event happened. Oil prices did drop on that news. We'll continue to follow the story for you throughout the day. Meantime, 50 attorneys general are launching an antitrust probe into Google, focusing on search and advertising. The CEO of an advertising platform that works with those companies, Google, Facebook, another tech target, joins us with why both companies could be in the clear That's next. We also want to draw your attention to shares of Roku. They are down nearly 6%. This is one of the best performers in the market this year, now down about 7.5% after Apple announced the pricing of its new TV service at just $4.99 a month and free for a year if you buy a new device. Take a look at Disney and Netflix as well, both at session lows after the Apple announcements. That Apple event is still underway. We'll have more headlines for you after this quick break.
We can't make dinner cook any faster. We can't make your phone charge any quicker. And sorry, we can't speed up the traffic in Sutton Coldfield. But we can speed up the way you submit an energy meter reading. The British Gas app lets you book an engineer, as well as claim rewards and manage your accounts all within minutes. So you can spend less time running your home and more time enjoying it. Download the British Gas app today.
This one shouldn't take long. Of course, if it had a cover, I might not be bothered. Can't see what's under there. And they'd have chained the back wheel. It would have taken me much longer, especially if the chain's off the ground. Makes it harder to cut. This one doesn't even have a lock on the front. So, in the time I've been talking to you, I've nicked it.
Over 9,000 scooters and motorbikes were stolen in London last year. Lock your bike, chain the rear wheel, and cover it to make it harder to steal. Lock, chain, cover. The Met Police.
For people who want to feel happier, stronger, fitter, get further, faster, better. For people who want to, but don't always manage to. It doesn't matter how you want to do it, who you want to do it with. It matters that you want to. Virgin Active. We'll find a way for you. Join in September and get 15% off each month on 12-month memberships. Visit virginactive.co.uk. Participating gyms. Terms and conditions apply.
Casa Bacardi is back, bringing a party with an unmissable lineup and tasty rum cocktails to London. With Bacardi's new Sound of Rum crew, featuring live sets from One Asen and P Money, MCing from Harry Pinero, and loads more. The perfect recipe for an epic night out. Casa Bacardi at Box Park Croydon on September 14th. For more info and to get your tickets now, head to boxpark.co.uk. Do what moves you. Over 18s only. Drink aware for the facts.
Welcome back to The Exchange. We're getting more headlines from the Apple event. There are a lot of stock movers as a result of the news this afternoon. Let's check in with Julia Borson first, see what they've announced. Julia?
Apple Series 5 Apple Watch just announced, and the key differentiator here is that there is an always-on display, so you won't have to tap or flip your wrist to be able to see what time it is and also get other key metrics, including many more health tracking metrics. So this will still have the 18-hour battery life as well as a built-in compass. Now, this new generation Series 5 watch will start at $399, $499 if you want cellular access as well. That's the same cost as the last generation, but with new bells and whistles included. And they announced a lower price point for the Series 3 watch. So 2 generations ago, those will now start at $199. They also introduced a range of new colors and designs, more customizable. So they've just moved on. Tim Cook is back on stage. But I do want to note that Fitbit moved lower on this news. Guys, back over to you.
Julia, thanks. Yep, Fitbit right around session lows. Dan Ives, the Apple analyst, and Ed Lee of the New York Times are standing by. Gentlemen, we've had look at Roku shares, by the way, down big time today on the Apple TV news.
Yeah, it seems like it's sort of like this an Amazon moment where you hear about Amazon getting into someone's space and all of a sudden the attendant issues around that start to drop. So I think with the Roku dropping, that significantly shows there's a lot of confidence in what Apple's trying to do here with their subscription business, with their video business. The other key thing about Apple TV is that they've announced it's launching in 100 countries simultaneously. Basically, there's no sort of waiting to get rights for international rollouts. They've got, 1.4 billion devices activated around the globe, and they're going to take advantage of that right away. So I think that it's a huge signal, again, that they're super serious and that, if you're a standalone in that space like Roku is, you could be vulnerable.
And Dan, we talk a lot, about the watch and how successful a product it's been, but it still doesn't get that much attention on Wall Street. Today's announcements, which include, the always-on feature, and perhaps significantly, $199 for the Series 3 from a couple generations ago. How big a deal will that be for the shares, do you think?
I think it's a bigger deal than is appreciated by the street, and it continues to be Apple's world, and everyone else is paying rent in terms of on the watch side. And I think this is them sort of doubling down, being more aggressive, and kind of what Ed alluded to. I think you combine this with that services announcement of $4.99. You got whiteboards going up across Roku, Netflix, Disney. I mean, this is an all-hands-on-deck moment for competitors.
And looking at that price point, I think what we want to see later on when they talk about the iPhone is not necessarily the high-end, but how they're going to price the low-end phone. I think consumers are that much more price conscious now because they're seeing a sort of a level playing field with the technology and what's available with the Chinese competitors, with Samsung. So price is going to be that much more of a factor for people buying in.
All right, and we will wait for that any moment now, hopefully. Thank you guys, Ed and Dan. Meantime, Google is facing a huge legal battle after attorneys general from nearly every state launched an antitrust probe into its online advertising practices. Does Google have a monopoly in this area? Joining me now is Mark Douglas. He's the CEO of Steelhouse. That's a self-service advertising platform for companies, and Mark works closely with Google and Facebook. How much of your clients' online, or should we say digital placement, is going to those two platforms?
Well, a lot, obviously. Google being number one, Facebook follows closely. But there's also a lot of other outlets for the money. So those two companies definitely dominate the space, but they don't completely own it.
But that issue of dominance is key. You know, not long ago, the Fanatics CEO, Michael Rubin, was on CNBC, and he said half of their digital spend goes to Google, half of it goes to Facebook, and I mean, that's everything. So I'm not saying that every company is like that, but is more than 75% going to these two platforms?
Well, a lot has, yeah, it could be as high as 75%. But there's a big change occurring. Television, streaming television is now becoming digital advertising too. That's happening very rapidly, and that third leg is going to start to take is starting to take market share initially away from Facebook and eventually from Google also.
Who does that benefit? What non-Google and Facebook players mostly does that benefit?
It benefits Disney. It benefits basically all of the television networks. The ability to target on TV is becoming like it has been for social, essentially. So you see a lot more dollars flowing there. You're starting to see retailers and advertisers that didn't previously do TV. They're now starting to do TV advertising.
It's funny you say this because from a user point of view, the prevalence of ads on streaming is driving me crazy.
Yeah.
You know, and the DVR was invented to solve that problem for linear TV. What happens if ad blocking comes next? If Google, for example, or Facebook launches a product, they say, yeah, we'll give you streaming. We'll be your all-in-one streaming platform with ad blocking.
Yeah, well, you can pay for that right now, right? You can get a Hulu membership, pay $2 extra, but one way or another, the network is making money. So streaming ads can't be blocked. That's the point you're making. And you're seeing people pay for that, but most consumers are not. They're just watching the ads.
So finally, do you think that attorneys general are going after Google and Facebook just at the time when their market dominance will be lessened?
Well, the thing about this is that antitrust laws don't protect companies from companies. They protect consumers from companies. So it's hard to argue how a free service is in some way harming consumers. I think where the real vulnerability is Google makes a lot of their money from selling companies their own brands on search. It's called branded search.
Yes, we heard about that this week.
Right, and I think Google is way more vulnerable because branded search is a huge portion of business. Facebook, I think, actually could love having the attorney generals basically clear them, essentially, and actually could lift their business.
And benefit from that.
Yeah.
Mark, it's fascinating. Thank you so much. Good to get your firsthand point of view. Mark Douglas is the CEO of Steelhouse. Amazon's cashless Go stores aren't exactly going to plan. Up next, an inside look at how the company is missing on its retail location targets. We're back after this.
I can't believe it. We can't make dinner cook any faster. We can't make your phone charge any quicker. And sorry, we can't speed up the traffic in Sutton Coldfield. But we can speed up the way you submit an energy meter reading. The British Gas app lets you book an engineer, as well as claim rewards and manage your accounts all within minutes. So you can spend less time running your home and more time enjoying it. Download the British Gas app today.
This one shouldn't take long. Of course, if it had a cover, I might not be bothered. Can't see what's under there. And they'd have chained the back wheel. It would have taken me much longer, especially if the chain's off the ground. Makes it harder to cut. This one doesn't even have a lock on the front. So, in the time I've been talking to you, I've nicked it.
Over 9,000 scooters and motorbikes were stolen in London last year. Lock your bike, chain the rear wheel, and cover it to make it harder to steal. Lock, chain, cover. The Met Police.
For people who want to feel happier, stronger, fitter, get further, faster, better. For people who want to, but don't always manage to. It doesn't matter how you want to do it, who you want to do it with. It matters that you want to. Virgin Active. We'll find a way for you. Join in September and get 15% off each month on 12-month memberships. Visit virginactive.co.uk. Participating gyms. Terms and conditions apply.
Casa Bacardi is back, bringing a party with an unmissable lineup and tasty rum cocktails to London. With Bacardi's new Sound of Rum crew, featuring live sets from One Asen and P Money, MCing from Harry Pinero, and loads more. The perfect recipe for an epic night out. Casa Bacardi at Box Park Croydon on September 14th. For more info and to get your tickets now, head to boxpark.co.uk. Do what moves you. Over 18s only. Drink aware for the facts.
Did you know Currys PC World do business? Saving your business up to 30% with mega deals on computers and printers, electricals, large screen TVs, and even more. Top brands like HP, Microsoft, Epson, Sony. And if you find it cheaper from any major retailer, we'll match it. Get these deals before they're gone. Must end soon. Visit your nearest store or pcworldbusiness.co.uk/megadeals. T's and C's apply. Excludes Inc. and third-party sellers. Visit website for price promise details. Claim within 7 days.
Nurses like you love the RCNI Nursing Careers and Jobs Fair. Here's why.
It's an easy way to get your CPD hours.
There are loads of job opportunities on the day.
The free workshops are great for learning something new.
It's an event just for us. The RCNI Nursing Careers and Jobs Fair. Coming to London on the 17th and 18th of September. Register now for free entry. Search RCNI Events.
Welcome back to The Exchange. We've been following headlines from Apple all hour, where they have an event launching new products, including the iPhone. Julia Borson has the very latest. Julia?
Kelly, that's right. Unveiling the iPhone 11. They haven't yet announced a price tag for the iPhone 11, but they say it'll be available in 6 different colors. Toughest ever smartphone in terms of the strength of the glass on top, and also talking extensively about the new capabilities around the camera. Dual cameras, the ability to take an extra ultra wide view. So instead of zooming in, this is the opposite, that being able to zoom out without moving where you're standing. Also talking about portrait lighting as well as night mode. We're listening for the price tag. Guys, back over to you.
Julia, thank you. Julia Borson. Real quickly, Dan Ives, are you impressed by what you've heard on the phone?
I am, and 350 million iPhones in the window of an upgrade opportunity. That's what Cook and Cupertino are going after, an iPhone 11. A significant launch ahead.
Ed, give me a thumbs up, thumbs down.
Yeah, no, I'll do a thumbs near sideways up. I think it's impressive. They're clearly made the upgrade cycle the way, come to expect, what Apple customers have come to expect. So I think that 350 million, I think it's going to be a nice target for them.
All right, gentlemen, thank you very much for your time this hour. Ed Lee, Dan Ives. It's been almost 3 years since Amazon launched its first cashierless Go stores, but it appears not everything is going to plan. The information is out with a new report saying Amazon forecasts more than $500 million in annual revenue from Go stores by 2020. Now that's up from $28 million last year. For more, I'm joined by the reporter behind the story, Priya Anand from The Information. Priya, thank you for joining me. And as we've spent the last hour highlighting Apple launching new products, this is a reminder that Amazon's new launches around its physical stores, you say, have not been going as well as they had hoped.
That's right. They had actually planned to, by the end of this year, have 56 Amazon Go stores. So far, the Go stores that they've opened to the public have this cashierless technology where you can scan an app, pick whatever you want off the shelf up, and then leave. And the idea is to eliminate checkout lines. It hasn't been going as well as they had hoped. Right now, they have about 18 stores listed on their site that have been announced to the public. Some of them are not yet open to the public. Some are restricted to employees. Others are still coming soon. They hope to reach 56 by the end of this year, so things are moving slower than planned.
How important are these stores for Amazon strategically?
These stores really represent Amazon's most ambitious effort to enter physical retail. For years, Jeff Bezos had said that Amazon would only get into physical retail when it has something special to do, something where it can offer a different customer experience than the norm. And Amazon's opened a couple of other kinds of stores, and most notably, they bought the Whole Foods supermarket chain a few years ago. But Whole Foods still, for the most part, aside from the fact that Amazon's rolled out delivery, resembles a typical grocery store experience. You're still going and you're picking up what you want, and then you wait in line, and then you leave and you take it home somehow. And Amazon Go, with the cashierless experience, is much more experimental and much more ambitious, and if successful, could really upend physical retail compared to the way, they changed e-commerce over the years.
As we're talking about the California legislation that could undermine Uber and Lyft's business models, is regulatory pushback one reason Go stores haven't launched more quickly? Because you're seeing cities and states respond by saying, we're going to require people to take cash.
That's right. There is a concern that if folks are unbanked, that they might not have access to these kinds of stores, and that could pose a problem if these stores expand. So there are those kinds of concerns that they have. And also, one of the other problems that they've had in expanding is somewhat logistical. Ultimately, they have pretty specific requirements to launch a Go store. If you ever walk in and look up at the ceiling, there are cameras everywhere. They need high ceilings, and that's pointed out in the documents that I reported on as something that does sort of limit where they can expand. On top of that, they aren't quite sure at this point, because it's such an experiment. These stores have only been open to the public for about a year and a half, if they're enough of a destination or not. Yeah. When the stores first opened to the public in Seattle, there were lines outside, which is ironic, of people trying to get in. But all the rest of the stores, if you open one up in Houston, for example, a car-centric city, are people going to drive there, or is it just an attraction if you can whiz in, whiz out? Yeah.
Priya, thanks very much for your reporting and for joining me. Priya Anand.
Thanks for having me.
And that does it for the exchange today. Time for Power Lunch, which starts now.
It starts right now, Kelly, and we will see you back over here in just a minute. Welcome, everybody. I'm Tyler Matheson, pumped up for what we've got on Power Lunch this day. A lot of Apple. Apple's big event is underway. Lots happening there. The tech giant talking television, video games, and, of course, new iPhones and more. We have full coverage as they unveil their products as that continues throughout the next hour. Plus, WeWork woes. Say that 5 times fast. As the unicorn gets ready to go public, its biggest shareholder reportedly wants to shelve the IPO. We'll have those details and discuss them. And later, it is the momentum crush. Investors are fleeing the stocks with the biggest gains over the past year, and it could be a warning sign for the broader market. So pay attention. Power Lunch starts right now.
Thanks, Tyler. Welcome to Power Lunch. I'm Melissa Lee. Stocks are under a bit of pressure. And as Tyler had mentioned, take a look at the NASDAQ. That is getting hit the hardest as those high-flying momentum names are selling off. On the flip side, though, we do have small caps continuing their outperformance from yesterday, up again today by about 1%. Ty.
All right, 2 headlines from Washington affecting your money as I get myself established here after doing fist pumps and high fives after that wonderful show opened. Stocks did jump higher on a glimmer of hope in trade talks, but then they turned right back lower when President Trump said that he has fired the National Security Advisor, John Bolton, over policy differences. That news also sending oil sharply lower, and Eamon Javers is live at the White House to wrap up what has been yet another very tumultuous day. Eamon.
That's right, Tyler. Another dramatic departure from the Trump administration, but we just got a little bit more context here. We heard from the Secretary of State and the Secretary of Treasury about Ambassador Bolton resigning from the White House. The president surprising the world and much of the White House staff, announcing that by tweet earlier today. It was very sudden the way the rest of us found out about it, but a reporter in the room asked the Secretary of State if he had been blindsided by this news, and here's how he responded to it.
I'm never surprised.
Well, let me ask you this.
And I don't mean that on just this issue. And I think Secretary Mnuchin would say the same thing. We work very closely with the President of the United States. I think we have a pretty good understanding of how he's thinking about things. I think you'd agree, Stephen, at nearly all times. And so, our mission says not to talk about these inner workings and the palace intrigue that I know you are so curious about, but rather to talk about the things that matter to American foreign policy.
So Pompeo saying there with a smile, I'm never surprised. That smile might be an indication of the fact that Pompeo and Bolton were reported to be at odds with each other for months. Pompeo seen as a rival for Bolton. Bolton now out. The question is, how is that going to shift this administration's foreign policy? I've been asking White House aides and advisors whether or not that decision by the president to invite the Taliban leadership to Camp David ahead of the 9/11 anniversary tomorrow was one of the precipitating factors for this. Stephanie Grisham, the White House press secretary, told me no, it wasn't that. There's been many factors. Another official here texting me just within the past couple of minutes saying this was death by 1,000 cuts. So the White House explaining this by saying that ultimately the president and his national security advisor disagreed on a number of things, but they won't say specifically what those things were or why it came to a head today. Tyler?
All right, Eamon, thank you very much. Eamon Javers on the North Lawn.
Now, the Apple product event is underway out in Cupertino. Let's go to Julia Borston for what we've heard so far. Julia?
That's right, Kelly. They're right now talking about the iPhone 11. It's going to be much faster with better battery life, an hour more than the iPhone XR. They're talking about how they have this great dual camera that's going to have a much wider field of view possible, but they still haven't announced the price tag for this next generation iPhone. So we're waiting for that. But we did get a price tag for Apple TV Plus. We've been waiting for that since March, and now we got a launch date as well. Take a listen to Tim Cook.
We're excited to tell you that the first shows will be available on November 1st, and we'll be adding more Apple originals every month, and Apple TV Plus will be available in over 100 countries at launch. And it is just $4.99 per month for your whole family.
Now that $4.99 is key because there was some speculation that it could cost as much as $9.99 a month. And we should note that Netflix, Roku, and Disney all moving on this news, hitting new session lows. We see Disney down almost 2.5%, Netflix down 3.25%, and Roku down over 9%. So also we got a price tag for Apple Arcade, announcing that that will also cost $4.99 a month for that unlimited video game service with 100 games, and that's going to be launching on September 19th in 150 countries. We also heard about a next generation iPad as well as new Apple Watches with more capabilities and a big focus on health. We'll be continuing to listen, and we'll be listening especially for the price tag for those new iPhones. Back over to you.
All right. Thank you very much, Julia Borson. Let's get to our panel to break down what we've heard from Apple so far. Russell Hawley is managing editor of Mobile Nations and joining us for the first time after announcing their new firm, Lightshed Partners. Rich Greenfield and Walter Piecyk, formerly with BTIG. Gentlemen, welcome to you both. Walter, let's start off with you in terms of what Apple has announced. They spent a lot of time on the watch. We still don't know the price on the phone. What do you make of it so far?
It's a typical Apple announcement. You know, there's typically a run-up in the stock ahead of time, and then there's a sell-off the day of the announcements because there hasn't been a tremendous amount of new innovation. I mean, the company sold, 230 million phones back with the iPhone 6. That was 5 years ago, so we're down significantly since then. It's a new camera. We'll see if the pricing is any different, and that helps to mitigate some of the unit decline that exists out there. But again, this is just a more of a typical Apple launch, except for the new services that they're talking about, this $5 a month. This is the new era for Apple where they're trying to move out from being just an equipment company into more of a recurring revenue business, whether it's $5 a month or $10 a month. This is part of the new story of Apple. So that's the new thing for today.
Sure.
The iPhone stuff is kind of status quo.
What am I getting for $5 a month, Rich?
You know, it's funny. Brandon Ross, our partner in Lightshed, we've been debating this for months with investors, trying to explain to them that this is a really big deal. This is not a joke. Apple's not doing this lightly. They're really serious, and that we're in this kind of transformational period for TV, moving from linear TV to internet TV. Apple, this isn't like, it's not game over. It's not like Netflix and Disney Plus have won. There's going to be a lot of winners in this space, and for $5 a month, first of all, let's even, before we get to $5 a month, if you buy an Apple device, and Walt calculates that there's over 250 million Apple devices sold each year. If you think about that, 250 million people will have a full year subscription to this service without paying.
Yeah, but to Melissa's point, you still got to tell me what I'm going to log into it, turn it on, and watch. What am I looking for?
Well, you have almost a billion devices, just phones alone. You're right. You have almost a billion phones that'll be able to turn this on, then Max on top of that. I mean, a massive global bigger install base than any other streaming service out there. You're going to be able to just turn it on and watch it. And whether you're on a Samsung TV or any television, you're going to be able to watch this product, whether there's be a Roku app, there'll be an Apple
Have
app.
they announced any of the shows for it yet?
They did. I mean, the morning show is up. They announced C this morning. I mean, you probably have $2 billion of annual investment that's being pumped into this,
But you're paying
scaling very
$5.99.
rapidly.
I mean, you're paying
You're paying nothing for most people.
For most people, okay, but still, eventually the decision will have to be made as to whether or not you pay whatever it is at that point, $4.99 a month or whatever it may be, for what? For originals?
How many shows on HBO do you watch in a year? Just at roughly, ballpark.
I don't know, 3.
Okay. So they need to have 3 shows that you like over the course of, not the first year, the second year. Because the first year you're getting it for free. By the second year, they need 3 shows that each of you are going to watch. My bet is they're going to figure out a way to do that, and this is going to upside surprise in terms of how big a deal this is.
We are just learning the price of the iPhone 11. It is starting at $699.
So lower. So going for units now, right? We've leaned on price for years.
What happens to ASPs?
They've leaned on price for years to offset the unit declines. Now the replacement cycle is extended as long as it's been. You have upgrade rates at historical lows at operators across the world. So now maybe they're saying, like, look, we cut some prices after the last phone didn't sell well. That seemed to help us in this more recent quarter to mitigate some of these declines. They're going the opposite way.
Didn't they have to do this to compete with Huawei in some of the lower price or lower affluency markets?
I mean, people have talked about them having to cut price in the past. There's been plenty of successful years where they haven't done that and been able to grow the revenue or at least mitigate some of the declines. But clearly this was an issue after last year. They saw some success with price declines in some of these international markets. So they're going the opposite way now.
Wasn't the XR a slightly lower price version of the Apple X or XS or X? I don't know what it was.
The 10R was lower, but
10R,
then they had the 10S and the 10S Max in order to try and expand you on a higher price increase there. Revenue still ended up declining. You know, they don't disclose units in ASP anymore, but we still did see that revenue decline in iPhone. So
Russell, I want to bring you in. You're the gadget guy, so what do you make of everything so far, and particularly the $699 price tag?
Yeah, so I think there's actually some confusion going on with some of the stuff that was said just a moment ago. To be clear, the iPhone 11 that's being branded right now is actually a replacement for the iPhone 10R that was before. The R series is kind of being branded into like the standard brand for the iPhone, which is a cool way of doing this because it means that we're also getting the iPhone 11 Pro instead of what we saw before with the Max version. So there's just kind of some shuffling around here with the rebranding. The iPhone 10R last year was $749, so we're actually only looking at a $50 difference in price. And Apple has shifted back and forth, $50 when it comes to prices for release launches for a while now. So the pricing is actually fairly consistent with what Apple has done previously. The biggest thing here is being able to offer that ultra-wide camera and being able to offer the initial services that come with a standard iPhone at this price point and with battery that is even greater than what was offered last year. The biggest reason that that's exciting is that these cameras are designed to kind of meet the current pace that we're seeing from Google's Pixel line and Samsung's line and Huawei's line, not really exceed them, which is probably going to be a challenge for Apple when we come into the later year. But the video capabilities are what's going to help set it apart, especially when it comes to the front-facing camera. So this is all around a good thing, but the price difference isn't quite as significant as you might think.
It's also important. The lower price point actually will mean more people for Apple TV trials. Right? Because if you've got more devices out there at a lower price, more people are going to get a 1-year free subscription to Apple TV Plus.
If you buy a device, you get a TV.
They said
you don't
any
get a
Apple
TV, but you get the TV service. You get a what was it? Yeah.
We don't have all the details, but it sounded like from what he was saying, anybody who buys an Apple device this year is getting an Apple TV Plus subscription. The watch is being cut in price, as Walt just talked about. Apple's really focusing on subscriptions. You know, Brandon's been looking at the arcade product that they're launching. I mean, $499 is a pretty low price for the gaming product. I mean, I think Apple really wants to build a robust subscription business. And you look at music isn't beating Spotify, but it's number 2. It's doing a lot better than Amazon Music. And I don't think people give them enough credit for how well they're doing in building this subscription.
Let's bring Julia Borson back in. She's out there in Cupertino at the event with more news. Julia?
Yeah, Kelly, Apple just announced its first iPhone that is calling Pro, the iPhone 11 Pro. This one has 3 cameras And they say it's the most advanced and detailed iPhone yet. They say it's made out of surgical-grade stainless steel, and they're introducing a number of new finishes. Now, this iPhone 11 Pro will come in a 5.8-inch version and then also a 6.5-inch version. So 2 different sizes for that. They're talking about some of the capabilities now, but spatial audio sound, Dolby Vision, and what they're calling a Super Retina XDR display. So basically applying what they have for the MacBook Pro to a new high-end iPhone. No price tag for this one yet, but we do know that the iPhone 11 is starting at $699. Guys, back over to you.
All right, Julia, thanks. And Russell Holly, let's get your expertise on those details.
Yeah, so this is a lot of stuff that we expected with this kind of increased model. This is similar to the format that was brought up last year. Again, we're kind of getting rid of that XR design, and we're replacing it with this new Pro model, which falls in line with the iPad Pro and some of the other naming schemes that Apple has been rolling out over the last year. Having a third camera on the back that does even more, having the display up front that's going to take your visual experiences and ramp them up with HDR on board. These are the same kind of experiences that we've gotten from previous generations, just kind of increase that one level higher, which is going to be great, but it's also going to mean that those price tags are definitely going to be a little higher.
Got all that time?
You've lost me, guys. But I got a lot of model names, a lot of prices, the phone can do an appendectomy. It is going to be great. Should I buy the stock or not? What should I do?
I mean, the stock is now at a 10% premium to the S&P. It wasn't long ago. It was a 25%
It's been a discount for a long time.
A long time.
Should it be that much
now
of a premium?
It's a premium. It's been outperforming the market this year, and they are returning to growth, and they're doing a lot of this earnings growth through share repurchase still. Like, people talk about innovation. They're spending $16 billion in R&D this year. Since Tim Cook has taken over as CEO, that's 7 times higher than what they used to spend. And here's the products that we have today.
But the shares are still off their highs.
They're still off their high. They're still off their high, and the stock's also almost or close to $1 trillion market cap once again. But while they're spending 16 on R&D, they're also spending about that much every quarter on share repurchase. So if you're into share repurchase still as a way to drive valuation, that's your stock. That was more meaningful when the stock was a 25% discount to the market. Now we're at 10% premium. It's just not as compelling.
And they are no naives. I don't mean to suggest this at all. But as they get into the television production business, they're going to find a whole new way to spend money because Steven Spielberg doesn't work cheap.
Well, and more to that point, Tyler, I mean, $2 billion. First of all, $2 billion is as much as Disney spending in year one. I mean, this could easily be, you think Netflix is probably spending 15 plus billion. There's a lot of headroom to go. I mean, if Apple is serious and they see the benefit to device purchases and other parts of the franchise and watch time, everyone's trying to keep you in their ecosystem for longer and longer amounts of time. If this works and people love the morning show, if people love if they love this content, why wouldn't you spend more? I mean, Tim Cook was at a conference a couple of years ago, and I remember him being asked, could you spend as much as Netflix? I think at that point it was like Netflix was spending $7 billion a year. And he said, look, this is day one for us. We'll see, but in 4 or 5 years, we'll see what's possible. I mean, Apple has the balance sheet to really be a major player in this space.
Or buy the content.
Yeah, I don't, buying the content brings a lot of legacy problems in terms of distribution windows and legacy entanglements. I think if you look at what Netflix and Amazon are doing, it's a lot easier to just start fresh versus buy a media company and try to figure out a solution. So I'd be surprised if they did that, but I wouldn't be surprised if all of a sudden we woke up in a few years and they're spending $6, $7, $8 billion a year. Again, especially if it's driving device purchases and actual new subscriptions.
All right, guys, you guys are going to stick around. Rich, Walter, and Russell, we'll see you later on in the hour.
Ahead on Power Lunch, we have a problem. Despite growing concerns over WeWork's IPO, the company's roadshow could begin as soon as Monday. We'll have those details for you next. Plus, the great rotation. As investors shift away from momentum stocks suddenly, could it be a warning sign for the broader market? And as we continue to monitor Apple's product event, we'll bring you the updates as they happen. Don't go anywhere. We're back in 2.
This CNBC program is sponsored by PIMCO.
We can't make dinner cook any faster. We can't make your phone charge any quicker. And sorry, we can't speed up the traffic in Sutton Coldfield. But we can speed up the way you submit an energy meter reading. The British Gas app lets you book an engineer, as well as claim rewards and manage your account all within minutes. So you can spend less time running your home and more time enjoying it. Download the British Gas app today.
This one shouldn't take long. Of course, if it had a cover, I might not be bothered. Can't see what's under there. And they'd have chained the back wheel. It would have taken me much longer, especially if the chain's off the ground. Makes it harder to cut. This one doesn't even have a lock on the front. So, in the time I've been talking to you, I've nicked it.
Over 9,000 scooters and motorbikes were stolen in London last year. Lock your bike, chain the rear wheel, and cover it to make it harder to steal. Lock, chain, cover. The Met Police.
For people who want to feel happier, stronger, fitter, get further, faster, better. For people who want to, but don't always manage to. It doesn't matter how you want to do it, who you want to do it with. It matters that you want to. Virgin Active. We'll find a way for you. Join in September and get 15% off each month on 12-month memberships. Visit virginactive.co.uk. Participating gyms. Terms and conditions apply.
Casa Bacardi is back, bringing a party with an unmissable lineup and tasty rum cocktails to London. With Bacardi's new Sound of Rum crew, featuring live sets from One Asen and P Money, MCing from Harry Pinero, and loads more. The perfect recipe for an epic night out. Casa Bacardi at Box Park Croydon on September 14th. For more info and to get your tickets now, head to boxpark.co.uk. Do what moves you. Over 18s only. Drink aware for the facts.
1 in 4 children believe potatoes grow on trees. 1 in 5 children believe fish fingers are made from chicken. And 1 in 8 adults believe the moon landings didn't happen. People believe all sorts of strange things. Some people believe that insurance companies try to avoid paying claims. But last year, Zurich paid 99% of insurance claims made by their UK customers. Zurich, an insurance company you can believe in. To find out more, visit zurich.co.uk/99.
WeWork reportedly planning to go full speed ahead with its IPO, even against the wishes of its largest shareholder. Leslie Picker's got the very latest in this saga. Leslie.
Hey, Melissa, saga's the right word for it. That investor you referenced, SoftBank, urging WeWork's parent company to abandon the deal altogether. According to people with knowledge of the discussion, SoftBank is concerned about the valuation that WeWork could get in the public markets. WeWork is having trouble finding investor demand at about 1/3 of the $47 billion price tag that SoftBank assigned in its latest funding round. That markdown could spell trouble for SoftBank's attempt at raising another $100 billion vision fund to invest in startups. But WeWork does not appear to be giving up easily. 2 separate sources I spoke with said it's still all systems go for an IPO. In other words, WeWork is still moving forward with the deal. There was a big meeting to discuss plans last night. I'm told an official roadshow launch date has not yet been set, but I'm hearing there were discussions about making some corporate governance changes, although it's unclear which ones and whether they'll come to pass ultimately if this deal does move forward. Either way, WeWork needs the cash. An IPO could bring billions of dollars more to the table. Plus, WeWork would get to cement a $6 billion credit facility from the banks underwriting the deal. Guys.
Leslie, stay with us to talk more about this. We want to also bring in Elliot Brown. He's a reporter with the Wall Street Journal. And Elliot, they're looking at this junk bond offering now. They have a lot of debt they can raise contingent on the IPO. How much does WeWork need the money?
WeWork's business model absolutely depends on it raising more money, and that's sort of the story with them from the start, where every year they keep doubling their valuation and basically doubling the amount they raise. So if they're going to keep growing, they need to keep raising money.
How much money, Elliot? Because it seems like the valuation issues as they prepare to go public are going to be a big problem for them. You've got Aswath Damodaran out now saying that it's a $14 billion valuation. You know, the initial range was supposed to be in the 20s, and maybe it can still get there. What do you think they need to strive for?
Many billions, and yeah, like you said, it's this weird puzzle where if you need to raise $3 billion in IPO to get $6 billion in debt, but then the problem with debt is you have to pay it back. So, and if their valuation is lower, then suddenly they have a lot more debt compared to the size of the company. I mean, the short answer is, as long as they want to keep growing, which is the pitch they've made to investors, they need to really sort of double their spending every year. At least that's been the pattern for the past history, 9-year history of WeWork.
So handicap the risks for me for WeWork. As I understand it, and my understanding may be imperfect here, if they shelve the listing, they lose access to a loan or a line of credit. If they reduce the listing, that puts SoftBank, reduce the size of the IPO, and the valuation, that hurts SoftBank and its ability, who is one of the biggest backers, and its ability to raise a funding round. On the other hand, if they go with an IPO and it flops, there's a big risk there. So handicap the risks for me.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's pretty well put. SoftBank, it's a really bad look right now if they were to have a big markdown on WeWork because they're trying to raise a ton of money on the thesis that they're a really good tech investor. And for WeWork, yeah, I mean, if you get more money from SoftBank, it's a big reputational hit because you pulled an IPO that's embarrassing. On the other hand, Regus, which basically has a very similar business model to WeWork, was the hot office company of 99 and 2000. They pulled their IPO in 99 after very similar arguments were being made.
Leslie, I mean, to Elliot's point about the impact on SoftBank, it seems like the impact would be almost greater on SoftBank than it would be for WeWork. Yes, it would raise less money, but I would think that early investors are already writing down the valuation of their stakes on their books. So the impact won't be felt there. But for SoftBank, this follows Uber and it follows Slack, which haven't been trading well. So it's sort of like damned if you do, damned if you don't for SoftBank.
There's certainly a pattern here with regard to these recent IPOs that SoftBank has backed. Although it's important to note for WeWork, I mean, in comparison with Uber and Slack, those are, they're trading in the public markets, maybe lower than where they intended to initially, but they're still kind of doing their thing. With regard to WeWork, there was a Bernstein note today that said that if they don't have about $7.2 billion worth of capital to fund their free cash flow losses over the next few years, over the next 4 years, I mean, they're basically out of business. They need this capital to stay alive. So it's a matter of, this is a company that risks going down to zero if they don't have the capital to fund their operations, especially given the various plans that they've set forth. And that, by the way, is in a non-recessionary scenario. Bernstein stressed for a recession in 2020, and in that scenario, they would need upwards of $9 billion in capital to fund their operations. So this cash isn't really like a nice to have, it's kind of a need to have for this company.
And Elliot, I thought your comparison with Regus from the late 90s was entertaining. I mean, we had Sam Zell on earlier this week saying that nobody has ever made WeWork's business model work. But is it actually the case that there is a precedent for this business? It just doesn't come at the multiple that maybe WeWork would like.
Yeah, I actually think it's, I mean, if you look at Regus today, after a little hiccup with bankruptcy, they're a decent business. I mean, it's $4.5 billion market cap, though they have the same number of desks, give or take, as WeWork. So you can make money by leasing office space and then subleasing it for more money. That is a sound business model. It just sort of, what is the valuation? What is the multiple investors are willing to pay for that? And WeWork's always been really, really, really high on that.
Yeah, exactly. All right, we'll see. Elliot, Leslie, thank you both. Appreciate it very much.
All right, now let's go to Mike Santoli for Trading Nation. Mike.
Tyler, thank you very much. Well, gold's rally has been put on ice in September. The metal falling below $1,500 an ounce today, tumbling to its lowest level in more than a month. Citi, though, still backing gold right now. Analysts targeting a record high of $2,000 an ounce in the next year or two. Let's bring you your Trading Nation team today. Ari Wald of Oppenheimer and Nancy Tengler of Tengler Wealth Management. Ari, was a furious rally up to the recent highs in gold. Pretty sharp pullback. What do you see it as? Just a kind of a gut check for the rally, or is this a big reversal?
Well, it's, first I think it's important to distinguish that gold was really trading lockstep with bond prices. As rates were collapsing, gold got a bid, it was moving higher, and now as rates start to back up a little bit, gold is correcting. So I think one's view on gold and bond prices should be aligned here. We're of the view that, this safety trade in general is coming off this very extended condition, and I think could continue to unwind, which I think, and in our view, is that this should be bullish for risk instead. So I think there's a little bit more downside here. Speaking in terms of GLD, support starts at 139, followed by 136.50. There's some gaps in the chart there. Still a positive trend, so not meaningful downside, but at least a little bit more time is needed.
Yeah, a little over 140, 141 right now for the GLD. So, Nancy, as Eric suggests, the macro conditions, when they're right, gold can work very well. What do you think its place is in a longer-term portfolio?
Yeah, Mike, we talked about this about a month ago, and I said, look, I'm not interested at these levels, and I'm still not interested because I think there are places you can invest and from these levels make more money. The thing that worries me about the GLD is it's not backed dollar for dollar with gold bullion, and so it is meant to trade in sentiment with gold bullion. So that makes me a little bit nervous as an investor, and I'm more interested in actual companies that make money and I can measure. So the market's been giving conflicting messages. Utilities and semis are among the two best performing industries through the end of August. So I think you sit this one out for a while, and if you do want to own it, you own the actual metal at less than 5% of your total portfolio.
All right, yeah, we'll see how this general unwind of August's hottest trades goes. That includes gold and bonds, of course. Harry and Nancy, thank you very much. For more Trading Nation, head to our website or follow us on Twitter at Trading Nation. Melissa, back over to you.
Thank you, Mike. Apple's big event still going on in Cupertino. All the news you need to know about and what it could mean for the stock coming up on Power Lunch. And something is happening in the markets right now that has some investors concerned. How worried should you be? Power Lunch, be right back.
And now, the latest from TradingNation.CNBC.com and a word from our sponsor.
During bull markets, many traders find themselves attracted to small cap stocks because they have a tendency to have a higher beta, meaning they generally move up faster than the broader market. But don't overdo it on the small caps because they're also more vulnerable to pullbacks. I'm Joanna Payne, and Schwab is the better place for traders.
You know that tech stock we talked about?
I can find and fund my car, from a Mini to a Jaguar.
Feel good car buying from findandfundmycar.com is the place where you can find quality used cars from trusted dealers rated by you, and where you can fund your car with finance to fit your budget. It's feel good car buying, all in one place.
Shouldn't be a carry on, choose findandfundmycar.com.
We can't make dinner cook any faster. We can't make your phone charge any quicker. And sorry, we can't speed up the traffic in Sutton Coldfield. But we can speed up the way you submit an energy meter reading. The British Gas app lets you book an engineer, as well as claim rewards and manage your accounts all within minutes. So you can spend less time running your home and more time enjoying it. Download the British Gas app today.
This one shouldn't take long. Of course, if it had a cover, I might not be bothered. Can't see what's under there. And then they'd have chained the back wheel. It would have taken me much longer, especially if the chain's off the ground. Makes it harder to cut. This one doesn't even have a lock on the front. So, in the time I've been talking to you, I've nicked it.
Over 9,000 scooters and motorbikes were stolen in London last year. Lock your bike, chain the rear wheel, and cover it to make it harder to steal. Lock, chain, cover. The Met Police.
For people who want to feel happier, stronger, fitter, get further, faster, better. For people who want to, but don't always manage to. It doesn't matter how you want to do it, who you want to do it with. It matters that you want to. Virgin Active. We'll find a way for you. Join in September and get 15% off each month on 12-month memberships. Visit virginactive.co.uk. Participating gyms. Terms and conditions apply.
Casa Bacardi is back, bringing a party with an unmissable lineup and tasty rum cocktails to London. With Bacardi's new Sound of Rum crew, featuring live sets from One Asen and P Money, MCing from Harry Pinero, and loads more. The perfect recipe for an epic night out. Casa Bacardi at Box Park Croydon on September 14th. For more info and to get your tickets now, head to boxpark.co.uk. Do what moves you. Over 18s only. Drink aware for the facts.
Welcome back, everybody. I'm Sue Herrera. Here's your CNBC News update at this hour. House Minority Leader Kevin McCarthy holding a news conference this morning following Congress's summer recess, where he immediately went after House Democrats.
We had 6 weeks back in the district listening to our constituents. I didn't hear anybody talk about impeachment. It is time for the Democrats to stop focusing on trying to tear the president down, but actually build America up.
Former National Security Advisor Michael Flynn appearing in court today. In the status hearing, a tentative date of December 18th was set for his sentencing. He pleaded guilty in October of 2017 to lying to FBI agents. He has been ordered to testify before Congress on September 25th. And Hong Kong's leader Carrie Lam rejecting any attempt by the United States Congress to make new legislation targeting her territory. She also called on the people in Hong Kong to stop demanding action from the U.S. You are up to date. That's the news update this hour. Kelly, I will send it back to you.
All right, Sue, thanks very much. Sue Herrera. Let's check on the markets right now, which were fluctuating earlier today on some major trade headlines and John Bolton's departure at the White House. Now the Dow has turned negative again. It's down about 35 points. And it's actually the outperformer. The S&P is down 11 points. That's a 0.4% move. And the NASDAQ down 0.5% today. We've been watching, obviously, for this sort of turn of the tide and the momentum trade with some of those tech names of late. Apple, though, is bucking that today. The shares are briefly positive. The event is still underway out in Cupertino, with the stock roughly steady right now. But its announcement about the $4.99 a month pricing of Apple TV and the November 1 launch date has certainly hurt shares. Take a look there of Walt Disney down 2.5%, Netflix down 3.5%, and Roku now down nearly 11%. And we'll continue to monitor that for you. But the oil market is closing up. Let's go to Dom Chu for how that one's moving. Dom.
All right, it's red arrows there as well. West Texas Intermediate, Kelly, right now you can see about $57.25 off 1%. ICE Brent crude futures off by about 0.5%, $62.22 there. The big catalyst today in the oil markets overall, that news from the White House that Ambassador John Bolton has resigned or has been fired as the National Security Advisor. That sent oil prices falling to their lows of the session at that point, off by about 2%. They recovered a bit, but are now drifting lower as well. We will be watching the energy complex as well for the overall prices in oil stocks. Also remember today, after the closing bell, you get the American Petroleum Institute private sector U.S. inventory data for this past week. And then tomorrow morning, you get the Energy Department's official U.S. weekly oil inventories data that comes out 10:30 a.m. Eastern tomorrow. So potential oil catalyst to this afternoon and tomorrow morning, guys. Back over to you.
All right, Dom, thank you. More news from the Apple event in Cupertino. Let's get straight to Julia Borston. Julia.
That's right. So they had announced that the iPhone 11 was going to start at $699. They just announced that the iPhone 11 Pro with 3 cameras is going to start at $999. And that will have 4 hours more in battery life. And then the iPhone Pro Max will start at $1099, and that will have 5 hours more in battery. So those are similar price points to the last generation, the current 10X and 10XS. They said that those 2 iPhones are going to ship on September 20th with pre-orders starting on Friday. Big focus here on battery life, on the strength of the screen. They showed a video of these iPhones being shot with water, which is the water resistance, something that there's been a lot of talk about, stronger glass. And they say this is the fastest chip ever in a smartphone. So we're going to hear more coming up, but some interesting numbers there for the price points of those iPhone Pros. Back over to you.
All right, Julia. Thank you, Julia Borston. Meantime, we do have a major change underway in the stock market. It's got some investors worried, frankly. Bob Pisani is looking at this rotation that is taking place. Bob.
I think it's a good thing, Melissa. It's a little confusing to explain, but let me just try to take a stab at it. We're seeing some rotation since the end of last week when we saw bond yields bottoming out. There's been a rotation. Cyclicals are back in. What are cyclicals? They tend to be reflective of the global economy. Banks have been improving. Energy stocks have been improving. Transportation stocks have been improving. Retail stocks. These are all sectors that have been lagging in the last couple of months. What's been doing a little bit worse? Defensive names that have been strong all throughout the year. Consumer staples have been down the last few days, real estate investment trusts, and utilities. This is what we talk about when we're talking about rotation. I know it's confusing, but it's not necessarily a bad thing. So if you take a look at some of the momentum names, this is a word we keep using a lot, momentum. It generally means prices have been improving better than the average of the market. If you look at PayPal and MasterCard, for example, we've seen some of these fintech names that have been out there recently. They have been down. Those have been big momentum names that we've seen. You put up that next full screen for me. Merck and Kimberly-Clark, consumer staple names that have been strong. They have also been on the weak side in the last several days. So it's those
momentum names that have been moving in different sectors that we've seen weak. At the same time, we've seen rotation into cyclical names. If you put up the next screen, rotation into some of those cyclical names, that has been a little bit better overall. So, for example, we've seen Norfolk Southern and CSX. We've got a nice rally going on in the transports in the last few days. And there you see Norfolk Southern, John Deere, Fastenal. This is just in the last few days since Wednesday's close. Again, this is associated with the bottom in yields that we have seen. The bond markets tend to be sending a signal then to the stock market overall. Finally, I just want to show you the transportation sector here today. On the day when we're down, the transports have been really strong. And look at this. Again, this is that 4-day rally in the transports, a classical cyclical group. So yes, we're getting rotation. It can be a little confusing. Some big momentum names like consumer staples and fintech haven't been doing as well. But this is a good sign to see beaten up sectors suddenly coming to the fore. Guys, back to you.
All right, Bob, thank you very much. So the investor exodus out of momentum stocks, is it a warning sign for the rest of the market potentially? Let's bring in Michael Cugino, President and Portfolio Manager with Permanent Portfolio Family of Funds, and CNBC Fast Money Trader Tim Seymour, CIO of Seymour Asset Management. Welcome to both of you. Michael, let me start with you. Bob detailed the movement in bank stocks. That must warm your heart because you like them. Do you think this is the beginning of a rotation into those stocks that Bob enumerated, or just sort of a little bit of a rebound?
Yeah, Tyler, I think it's probably too early to tell whether it's a longer-term trend or just quick trade. We've seen money moving so fast among sectors these days that it's hard to draw any long-term conclusions. But we've noticed a lot of the things that Bob represented as well, and financials would definitely be one of them. And yeah, we do like that sector. We think it's been undervalued for a while. It obviously hasn't kept up with the broader market. Valuations are attractive. Business conditions are pretty good, and consumers are spending and borrowing. And so wealth management, business transactions, M&A. I mean, a lot of these companies are hitting on multiple fronts from an operations standpoint, so we like them long term.
For you, what's the sweet spot in that banking sector? Big banks, regional, smaller banks, what?
We have exposure to a lot of those sectors. Asset management, regionals, and the big banks, we like them all. I think probably the biggest potential operating leverage might be in the regionals because there's the best chance for, middle America borrowing, spending, growing, whereas I think the bigger banks have been a lot more well-defined, I guess you could say.
So, Tim, are we a little jumping the gun in calling this a rotation, or is it really just that?
Well, look, over the last year and a half, people have complained that risk-reward, there's been a fair amount of volatility, and the stock market's done almost nothing. But you have seen these major periods of rotation. And if I look at banks and then taking it back even further, what's driving banks here clearly is we got so overbought in terms of bonds. So yields which were as low and on a relative basis were as overbought, so yields lower than they had been since the financial crisis. Typically, when we see that type of a rebalance, which is what we talked about at the end of the month, what we were going to certainly see out of pension funds was it tends to be equity positive. What you had in 2016 when we were coming out of this concept of were we going into a recession is you had an enormous rally point for the banks. But we've had a 20-something basis point move in the 10-year, and that's equated absolutely to the money center banks. And as discussed, the regional banks probably have the most leverage to a yield curve that it's not so much that it's steepened, is that yields are actually moving higher, and this augurs more optimism.
I get the move in the banks completely, Tim, but when you take a look at the moves, for instance, in the Russell as well as retail stocks, I mean, that's sending a signal, right, that the economy is getting better. I mean, what has changed to make these sectors go higher? And is the bounce that we've seen in these particular sectors more akin to a dead cat bounce?
Well, first of all, retail, which had underperformed the S&P over a year by about 20%, is now outperformed by about 6% over the last 4 days. It's been an extraordinary move. I think a lot of the deflation trade that was out there, you were talking about gold earlier, we've talked about yields, we've talked about some of the defensiveness, even the food stocks, which have rallied to multiples that really don't make a lot of sense. Banks multiples make a lot of sense here. And if you look at the transports, look at the breakout in FedEx. This is a company that's been trading at basically a trough earnings multiple. And I think investors at this point have some more confidence that the economy is not falling on its face. The central banks still hold all the keys, but rotation has been part of this market for the last couple of years.
Do you believe that the economy is not falling? I mean, have things in recent weeks, Tim, improved to the point where you're saying, you know what, the economy isn't as bad as everybody thought? And
let me explain that. Because on the manufacturing side, no. You looked at the ISM and you look at the PMIs, you look at the market PMIs, but you looked at the ISM services and that was better than expected. That was printing almost a 57. You have consumer confidence numbers. You have consumer spending. Whether you think it's good or bad, and it's good for the banks, you've seen consumer credit numbers come out, and revolving credit and non-revolving are effectively at record highs. So the consumer right now, and certainly those that tend to be spending in some of those parts of the lower income stores and whatnot, have jobs and are actually making more than they were. Right now, no, the consumer's not falling apart. And I think we've had some reaffirmation that despite the fact that yields were going lower, a lot of this was driven by bunds. A lot of this is driven by ECB policy. I believe the relative value trade had a lot of the U.S. dynamics being pulled down on a yield sense.
Mike, final question to you. I assume that behind part of your thesis in liking the banks is that you think the economic data are going to be okay and economic growth will be okay at the very least. Does that thesis extend then to those other cyclical sectors that Bob Pisani mentioned, namely transports and energy stocks? So do you favor them, or do you still think that they're not ripe?
No, absolutely, and we have exposure in all those areas. And our firm view is very similar to what Tim was saying. I mean, I think the safety trade got way overdone in the short term over the course of the summer. And yeah, there's a lot of risk to continued economic growth, no question. And they've been outlined, and I think investors were focusing on them. But what's been missing is all the good news that really is, in terms of operating performance, what's been going on in the U.S. economy. Now that investors are noticing that again, that safety trade is receiving, and we're seeing it recede in bond yields, we're seeing it recede in sector rotation, we're seeing it recede in gold and silver. Now, in the long term, that safety trade may be very legit, but I just think it got way overextended in the short term. So yeah, we have exposure in a lot of those areas: transports, industrials, energy, materials, and they've underperformed, so we're hoping for a little kick from there.
Excellent, gentlemen. Thank you very much. Yep. Mike Cugino, Tim Seymour. Appreciate it.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Now to the bond market. Rick Santelli's tracking the action at the CME. And Rick, some people say it's the bond reversal at the heart of the stock reversal too here.
Well, I'll tell you what, there's a lot of moving parts. Just look at it. August 1st start to two-year note yields. Remember, August was a crazy month. Now the correction's pretty crazy too. Look at 1 week of 30s. If you look at intraday lows all the way to intraday highs today, we've covered about 30 basis points in a week. Some say, look at Ford. We have a big room of newly issued corporates. This is Ford 21 paper against 30-year bonds starting in August. Now fine-tune it to June. It definitely looks like it's matching up. We don't know if it's going to match up in an ongoing issue, but markets are a little nervous. Remember, it doesn't take much of a spark when you have this type of bubble-ish scenario in interest rates. Back to you.
What is that, Rick? What are you holding?
A match, of course.
Oh, it's a giant match.
You don't want to see anybody light it.
Okay.
Of course it is.
Obviously. Thank you, Rick. Rick Santelli with this giant match. Coming up in Power Lunch, we get back out to Cupertino, California. The Apple event just wrapped up moments ago. We'll bring you all the latest details.
The Bond Report is...
We can't make dinner cook any faster. We can't make your phone charge any quicker. And sorry, we can't speed up the traffic in Sutton Coldfield. But we can speed up the way you submit an energy meter reading. The British Gas app lets you book an engineer, as well as claim rewards and manage your accounts all within minutes. So you can spend less time running your home and more time enjoying it. Download the British Gas app today.
This one shouldn't take long. Of course, if it had a cover, I might not be bothered. Can't see what's under there. They've chained the back wheel. Would have taken me much longer, especially if the chain's off the ground. Makes it harder to cut. This one doesn't even have a lock on the front. So, in the time I've been talking to you, I've nicked it.
Over 9,000 scooters and motorbikes were stolen in London last year. Lock your bike, chain the rear wheel, and cover it to make it harder to steal. Lock, chain, cover. The Met Police.
For people who want to feel happier, stronger, fitter, get further, faster, better. For people who want to, but don't always manage to. It doesn't matter how you want to do it, who you want to do it with. It matters that you want to. Virgin Active. We'll find a way for you. Join in September and get 15% off each month on 12-month memberships. Visit virginactive.co.uk. Participating gyms. Terms and conditions apply.
Casa Bacardi is back, bringing a party with an unmissable lineup and tasty rum cocktails to London. With Bacardi's new Sound of Rum crew, featuring live sets from One Asen and P Money, MCing from Harry Pinero, and loads more. The perfect recipe for an epic night out. Casa Bacardi at Box Park Croydon on September 14th. For more info and to get your tickets now, head to boxpark.co.uk. Do what moves you. Over 18s only. Drink aware for the facts.
1 in 2 people believe they should check their work email on holiday. 1 in 3 believe it's okay to eat a colleague's lunch. And 1 in 14 believe it's okay to steal loo roll from work. People believe all sorts of strange things. Some people believe that insurance companies try to avoid paying claims. But last year, Zurich paid 99% of insurance claims made by their UK customers. Zurich, an insurance company you can believe in. To find out more, visit zurich.co.uk/99.
The S in Audi S-Line stands for many things like sporty, stealthy and stylish. But there's just one more to add. A spin. Take one. In the Audi A7 Sportback S-Line, it's the only way to find out that it feels as sporty to drive as it looks. The Audi A7 Sportback S-Line, from just £479 per month. Initial rental £2,874. Test drive yours at West London Audi, or search Audi S-Line. Audi. Vorsprung durch Technik. 4-year contract hire agreement and 10,000 miles per annum. 18s and over. Subject to status. Damage charges may apply. Order by 30th of September 2019. No ownership. Finance providers may pay us as a broker for introducing you. Audi Finance. Visit audi.co.uk.
Get to Julia Borson with the latest details.
Probably
Julia.
Sally, if you wouldn't mind. Yeah, thanks.
That's right, Melissa. Tim Cook just leaving the stage, and there were 3 new iPhones in the spotlight. The new Apple iPhone 11 will start at $699. That's notable because that's about $50 less than the last generation's newest, lowest price point iPhone. Also announcing the iPhone 11 Pro. This is the first time Apple has ever used the word Pro to refer to an iPhone, and this is really differentiated by its cameras. It has those 3 cameras on the back. That will start at $999, and the Pro will have 4 hours more battery life, and that will be 5.8 inches. The 6.5-inch version of the Pro will start at $1099. The iPhone Pro Max, and will have 5 hours more of battery life. And in both of those Pro iPhones, they're going to include a faster charger. They're also water resistant and crash resistant, showing some pretty striking videos of them being shot with water and dropped on the ground. Now, all of those iPhones ship on September 20th, though you will be able to start to pre-order them on Friday. They also announced they're going to launch a trade-in program for iPhones, and that that the Apple store on Fifth Avenue in New York will reopen on the 20th as well. Guys, back over to you.
All right, Julia, thank you very much. Let's get back to our tech panel to break down what we've just heard from Apple so far. Russell Holly is managing editor of Mobile Nations. Rich Greenfield and Walter Piecyk are partners and analysts at the newly launched Lightshed Partners Group. Thank you guys once again. Russell, let me begin with you. I just asked Walter, what do 3 cameras allow me to do that I couldn't do before? Why is that such an attribute?
So previously you had 2 cameras that allowed you to take kind of a normal shot and then zoom in on something without having to do that pinch to zoom thing, which removed some quality when you did that. This version allows that same zoom in that gives you that increased quality, but it also allows you to zoom out, which is going to be really important for those kind of artistic panoramic shots. Let's say you're taking a shot of someone on a lake, and you can kind of capture that whole area instead of just the stuff that's just in front of you.
So let's talk about the thing that, of all of these things that stand out to me, the one that really stands out, gentlemen, I'll start with Russell and then I'll turn to you, Walter, is the idea of 4 hours longer battery life. That is a selling point to me. Russell.
Without a doubt. This is 4 hours longer battery life on the first model, and then 5 hours longer if you go with the slightly larger model, which is only going to be a $100 difference for that larger screen and that bigger battery. Both of those things are really significant, and it's one thing that, nobody thinks that their phone's battery lasts long enough. So to be able to take a phone that was already rated to be one of the best in the industry when it came to battery life on a daily basis and add 4 or 5 hours to it is going to be a very big deal.
Yeah, I have both phones. I have a. You want to know about me? Let's talk about me, shall we? Okay.
Let's talk about you.
Android. I have an Android and I have an iPhone. And my iPhone's battery, I think I have an 8 or something, I can't even remember, is better. It's better. And this is going to make it even better.
It's always getting better. And by the way, Tyler, first of all, I forgot to mention this in the last segment. Thank you for having Rich and I on today and our fellow partner, Brandon Ross, for the first day of LightShed.
We congratulate you.
Did you time it to the Apple event?
We can't say whether we exactly timed it to that, but it was,
it worked out well.
It worked out well.
Luck is the residue of good design.
We're fired up about the new venture and how we're going to attack this research business and some other things that we have planned.
So back to this Apple iPhone. Is the extended battery really a key selling point to you in this? So you pay more for it?
That was the pitch last year, right?
Yeah, right.
Better camera, better battery, same price. Better
price.
Camera, better battery, same price. So the more interesting thing really is that $700 11, which is the 10R, which is a price cut. That is new. There hasn't been a price back and forth. That is a new. The 10R was the big seller last year.
Yes.
And they sold it at $7.
Because it was cheaper than the 10 whatever.
The iPhone 11 is now $50 cheaper. They're trying to drive volume. In the years prior, they were increasing price when volumes were going down.
What is margins?
That's going to be a great question for the CFO on the next call. I mean, the margins have obviously held up incredibly well, given some of the headwinds that they've had in currency and other things, but that'll be something for Luca to discuss on the call.
How should we think about this upgrade cycle, if you even want to call it that? There are, 900 million phones activated globally? What percentage do you think are likely candidates for trade-ins?
I mean, people are holding on to their phones longer now than ever, even before the original iPhone. It's been 5 years since the iPhone 6. That was the only super cycle that we've ever had when they sold 230 million phones. We're going to sell 180 million this year. So the hope now is looking to next year on 5G, but the problem is 5G as a technology is not expected to be broadly available. So even though they will brand it as 5G next year, it's unclear if even that's going to be
So
something.
is there no answer for this particular
I think the answer is at
cycle?
some point, if it keeps lengthening, you just trough out. At some point, your phone is so old. There's people out there with their iPhone 6 and 6S that they're breaking, or 8, that you're sick of your battery life dying out midday. Time to get a new phone, and you've got a price discount because you have the iPhone 11 and it's $700.
And now if I go and buy one of these new phones, I'm going to get the TV service.
Exactly.
There you go.
That's the big part of this is going to be you buy an Apple device and it comes with
He
this
just
new
made
service.
it sound like not that many people are going to do that.
Well, how many people do you think buy some Apple device over the course of the next year? I mean, 200 million plus?
Look, the other driver is going to be competition, too. You have cable companies that are getting more aggressive. There are 5G networks that are more broadly launched overseas. You need competition to drive some of the upgrade cycle as well.
Could we be at a point now, though, where the phone is so good, the Pro Max phone is so good that it cannibalizes with the laptop?
I mean, I think that's been talked about before in terms of the iPad as well. The larger, when they went to the max-sized phones, that hurt iPad sales. But iPad sales, in their own right, came back, right? Their return to growth, they've been a really good product for them in the past year.
Anything you think Disney, Netflix, Roku should do right now to fight back, or do they need to?
You know, I think it's a total misperception or a misread from the market overall. This is not about Apple versus Disney or Apple versus Netflix or Roku. This is about a complete transformation of how humans on planet Earth watch content. And they're going to watch it on streaming services. And we should be talking about how fast cord cutting is going to accelerate when you get 200 million people around the world are going to have access to Apple TV Plus without paying for it. Disney's pricing far cheaper than anyone thought. I mean, if you signed up for D23 for Disney Plus, you got it for under $4 a month. They're going to price it at $6.99, which is way below what people thought. That's what sent Disney stock up, was the low price. Yep. I mean, each of these services is coming in. Everyone thinks Netflix, even at $12.99, is still far cheaper than the value they get out of it. I mean, think about it. The price of getting a cable subscription is over $100 a month. This is the real transformation. I think it's when you look at what Comcast has done in terms of putting all these services on the set-top box. They've been really innovative in leaning in and getting you access to all of these services without having to leave the Comcast set-top box. That's probably where the future is headed, meaning you sign up for a service and it comes with all these additional services.
An unprompted final answer for the table here, which is owned by Comcast. Rich Greenfield, thank you very much. Russell Holly, thank you. Walter, great, and congratulations once again, gentlemen.
And we will be right back.
When I lost my sight.
We can't make dinner cook any faster. We can't make your phone charge any quicker. And sorry, we can't speed up the traffic in Sutton Coldfield. But we can speed up the way you submit an energy meter reading. The British Gas app lets you book an engineer, as well as claim rewards and manage your account all within minutes. So you can spend less time running your home and more time enjoying it. Download the British Gas app today.
This one shouldn't take long. Of course, if it had a cover, I might not be bothered. Can't see what's under there. And then they'd have chained the back wheel. It would have taken me much longer, especially if the chain's off the ground. Makes it harder to cut. This one doesn't even have a lock on the front. So, in the time I've been talking to you, I've nicked it.
Over 9,000 scooters and motorbikes were stolen in London last year. Lock your bike, chain the rear wheel, and cover it to make it harder to steal. Lock, chain, cover. The Met Police.
For people who want to feel happier, stronger, fitter, get further, faster, better. For people who want to, but don't always manage to. It doesn't matter how you want to do it, who you want to do it with. It matters that you want to. Virgin Active. We'll find a way for you. Join in September and get 15% off each month on 12-month memberships. Visit virginactive.co.uk. Participating gyms. Terms and conditions apply.
Casa Bacardi is back, bringing a party with an unmissable lineup and tasty rum cocktails to London. With Bacardi's new Sound of Rum crew, featuring live sets from One Asen and P Money, MCing from Harry Pinero, and loads more. The perfect recipe for an epic night out. Casa Bacardi at Box Park Croydon on September 14th. For more info and to get your tickets now, head to boxpark.co.uk. Do what moves you. Over 18s only. Drink aware for the facts.
Welcome back to Power Lunch. I'm Diana Olick in Washington. After covering a Senate Banking Committee hearing with Treasury Secretary Mnuchin, he was short on details about the reform of Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac, but he did make it clear that Fannie and Freddie need a government backstop paid for by private capital, and that they also need to be recapitalized. Currently, they each retain $3 billion in capital, but Secretary Mnuchin said they would need a lot more.
If I were to give you a range of a number, it's more like $100 billion than it is $6 billion.
And the Treasury Secretary also reacted to the court ruling Friday, saying the Treasury sweep of all Fannie and Freddie profits was illegal. He said they may appeal that to the Supreme Court. Back to you guys.
All right. Thank you very much, Diana Olick. And thank you for watching Power Lunch.
A busy hour it has been. Thank you very much. And closing bell starts right now.
Welcome to the closing bell. I'm here at the JP Morgan Post. That stock up 0.8% today, over 3% in 2 trading sessions. We've got the constructive comments from Chairman and CEO Jamie Dimon coming up. Broader markets, though, lower, down 0.4% on the S&P. 59 minutes left of trade.
And I'm Morgan Brennan in for Sarah Eisen. Let's look at what is driving the action today. Weaker economic data put pressure on stocks early, but hope for a trade deal has helped erase most of those losses. A high-level departure from the White House that plays into the trade negotiations. Oil falling on that news as well. And Apple, that event is just wrapping up now. Announcements shaking out in the stocks of different competitors. We're going to fill you in on all of that action. But joining us for the hour is Steve Grasso from Stuart Frankel. Steve, great to see you.
Good to see you.
You know, it's amazing. Not necessarily a major move for the averages today or right now. Everything is slightly lower. And actually, if you look at the week, the Dow is actually flat so far to start off the week. And yet...
feels a lot worse than it...
Yeah, there's been this great rotation.
Right?
Talk to us about that.
So the rotation is obviously coming out of growth into value. How long does that last is how long the market will be under pressure. And for now, it probably will last a little bit longer, but get a trade deal, throw everything I just said out the window, and you see everything rally back. People are making the analogy back to 2009 and 2016 with this rotation. That lasted for a couple of weeks. I don't think it'll be that long.
Do you really think we're going to get a trade deal sooner rather than later?
So I think
the market
thinks that President Trump looks as this is his best indicator of how he's doing, how the market's doing. And if the market sells off enough, I think that you're going to start to see the wheels start to spin again, and that will rally the overall market.
All right, well, let's focus in on the big stories we're watching today. Julia Borson is in Cupertino with the latest from the Apple event. Wilfred has fresh comments from JP Morgan CEO Jamie Dimon at an industry conference. And Kayla Tausche is monitoring 2 stories out of Washington, trade and a high-level departure that sent oil lower. But Julia, let's go to you first on Apple.
Morgan, Apple announcing 3 new iPhones, including the iPhone 11 that will start at $699. Also announcing 2 versions of its new iPhone 11 Pro. Both of these have 3 rear-facing cameras, a longer battery life, and are water and crack resistant. The 5.8-inch version will cost $999, and the 6.5-inch version will cost $1,099, and they will all ship on September 20th. Now, Apple also announcing some new details for the launch of its Apple TV Plus. It will cost $4.99 a month. That's half of what some analysts projected. And the first shows will launch November 1st with 1 year free if you purchase an iPhone, iPad, or Apple TV. Take a listen to Tim Cook.
Our mission for Apple TV Plus is to bring you the best original stories from the most creative minds in television and film. Stories that help you find inspiration, that are grounded in emotion, truly stories to believe in, stories with purpose.
These iPhone announcements, this Apple TV news hitting a number of streaming stocks. We saw Netflix, Roku, and Disney all turn lower in this news. We're noting that Roku shares are off more than 11%. It seems like that price point is really impacting those other shares. Now, Apple also introducing a new Series 5 Apple Watch, also new iPads, a Series 7, 7th generation iPad, a big focus on health, big focus on the better quality screen, and also announcing a new trade-in program for the iPhones. A lot of news out of Cupertino here today. Guys, back over to you.
Julia, a lot of news. Thanks very much for being on top of it all for us. Let's bring in Tom Forte from D.A. Davidson. He's got a buy rating and a $270 price target on Apple. Tom, thanks for joining us. What's the headline for you? Takeaway here.
So the 2 key takeaways from Apple's announcements today are the $499 price point for Apple TV Plus. Going into the event, we were more interested in the price point for TV Plus than the specs for the new iPhone.
What were you expecting for the price point?
$999. So they're pricing it very aggressively. We think it's a shot across the bow against Netflix. Takeaway number 2, and what we think investors are missing, is tariffs. The tagline for Apple iPhone 11 should be, buy the iPhone 11 before the government raises the price on the iPhone 12. So you're looking at $699 for the entry price point. A 10% tariff brings it closer to $700 next year.
The fact that they did actually cut the price, that iPhone 11 is starting, what, $50 cheaper than the previous model? You surprised by that?
Surprised, but pleasantly surprised. I think last year the expectation was the higher price points would suck up the lower unit volumes. I think what you've seen over the course of the year is, as the smartphone markets matured, Apple's had to be a little more aggressive on price. So I like them coming out of the gate with a lower price versus last year.
Did they do any of that price based on the tariff issues? Do you think that made them decrease
this year,
the price a little bit?
They basically got a free pass from the U.S. government to the extent that they delayed the enactment of the tariffs. I think that was a huge benefit for Apple.
All right, Tom Forte, we're going to be talking to you a little bit later in the show as well to break down all of the details we've been getting this afternoon in more depth. Meantime, Steve, you're invested in Apple, right?
I am. I've been invested in Apple for quite some time. But if you look at that services number that it contributes to revenue, it's just under $40 billion. Obviously, they're going in the right direction. They're throwing everything they can at the model to replace the hardware-dependent model. And they're making a lot of headway. And I think it's a shot across the bow, not only to Netflix, but Disney with their streaming prices. So I'm still bullish on Apple.
All right. Well, bank stocks, meantime, are in focus today as Jamie Dimon speaks at the Barclays Global Financial Services Conference. And Wolf has the details on what he said. You've been following all of these discussions all day. Very
indeed. And he was preparing, he said, for the possibility of zero rates in the U.S., but did not expect them to materialize. He added that he thought rates were already plenty low. He downgraded full-year net interest income, but only marginally, $57 billion now rather than $57.5 billion. That continued a key theme from yesterday, that downgrades relating to lower yields were not too bad. He was constructive on the U.S. consumer and relaxed about the cycle overall, saying would not have the same levels of losses this time as the last crisis if one emerged. His biggest concerns were trade, China, and Hong Kong.
I think Hong Kong is a flashpoint, and trade, my view is that both sides want to do something. They've kind of got themselves wrapped up in complex negotiations. They are very complex, and whether it gets done the next year and a half, I don't know. But taking the trade war off the table is a good thing. Just have mature negotiators try to get it done.
The stock is up 0.8%, 0.9% now today, adding to strong gains yesterday. Strong gains as well for the last couple of weeks. We've seen a bit of a yield pickup anyway in the last couple of weeks, but I think the theme of the last 2 days has been these earnings guidance released from all of the banks, small and large, and they haven't been too bad relative to what they could have been given how much yields had dropped since the last update.
I think he has to be happy with what's gone on in the last couple of days when he starts to see rates bounce. And when we were just talking about this a couple of weeks ago, we were eyeballing that one spot 3.1 level in the 10-year, and now we've rallied significantly on that basis from there. So I think this is going to help the laggards. This is going to help the financials. This is going to help things that were challenged with the inversion of the yield curve. So he's got to be happy at least for the last couple of days, even though the overall market is lower.
I think definitely helped them, and as we've seen that play out this week, I would also point out they've had a decent run over the last 2.5 weeks. So the final week of August as well, first week of September, you've had quite a big jump. So they're not now that far from the highs that they reached when the market hit highs, but certainly cheap relative to S&P 500 still.
Financials, one of the sectors in the green again today. Meantime, a number of developments coming out of Washington today as well, including new headlines surrounding China trade and a big shakeup in the Trump administration. Kayla Tausche has all of those details for us. Hey, Kayla.
Hey, Morgan. National Security Advisor John Bolton is out after a months-long policy disagreement with President Trump and his Secretary of State Mike Pompeo, and just days after secret talks with the Taliban were called off. The departure of the administration's foreign policy hawk shaved $1 off WTI crude oil, still down about 0.5%. Secretary Pompeo briefed reporters with Treasury Secretary Steven Mnuchin this afternoon. They said President Trump could meet Iran's leader at the UN General Assembly in New York, but the maximum pressure campaign would continue.
Secretary Pompeo and myself and the president are completely aligned on our maximum pressure campaign. I think we've done more sanctions on Iran than anybody, and it's absolutely working. Now, the president has made clear he's happy to take a meeting with no preconditions, but we are maintaining the maximum pressure campaign.
Meanwhile, the South China Morning Post reports